let's go, because you know what I came in to do.
I don't get paid for overtime. I'm here to fight.
I'm a purist, so I would have much preferred Fury to fight Usyk.
Bob, you know, he's old, so can't expect him to be jumping up and down in anticipation for this event like Frank Warren. Frank Warren, he's arguing with anybody who has anything bad to say about the fight, while Bob, he just said it there, he preferred to see the Usyk fight. But at this stage here, it's happening and people have to accept it. A lot of people are going to opt out and not watch. I think Gareth Davis will still be there, although Tyson wasn't happy that Gareth Davis didn't stick up for him when the TalkSport commentary like Simon Jordan and I'm assuming Adam Catterall were getting stuck in. You know, Simon Jordan talking about sports washing, you're helping the Arabs participate in agenda-driven politics in sporting events, helping them put on a front for the world with this event because they want to outlaw homosexuality and bad treatment of women. And you can say all that. Most of the people who watch TalkSport, they don't give a shit about no sports washing or human rights in Saudi Arabia. And I'm not saying it's not an issue, but that's just the truth. Most of the people, they want to see a fight, they want to see a game, and they want to de-stress from all the other shit they have to go through in their everyday lives. This may not be the take that some of you thought that I'll be bringing, but it's entertainment. That's all it is. It doesn't matter if it's a KSI event or this event or even Fury versus Usyk. It's entertainment at the end of the day. And if you're not entertained, you find something else to take up your time. You can do a back check. I've never really trashed the event. I've never trashed it. I trashed the lies that Frank Warren was telling when the Usyk fight fell apart. That's what I trashed. Because yeah, I get it. Usyk wants to be undisputed, but if you have someone who is unwilling, which is the narrative that's put out there, I'm not going to argue. Most of the evidence leads to Tyson Fury being an unwilling participant. But apparently they're signed up to fight in either December or New Year. We'll see. We'll see. I'm still contemplating whether I buy the pay-per-view or not on Saturday. The event, will it be a huge success worldwide? I don't really see them making a big deal of it over here. Another territory where Top Rank will want to make an impression is in America, obviously. Is it a big event over there? I'm not sure. We'll soon find out. The event is on DAZN, not in the UK. I would assume not in America. Top Rank will have that covered. You can purchase the pay-per-view on DAZN. I'm wondering why they made that move. Are they trying to entice some of the African countries who might be supporting Ngannou? I mean, the app goes out to 200 countries, so that would be a smart move if they did. Roberto Duran Jr. is on the card. If you can find anything like his dad, that would be interesting. Carlos Takam versus OKOLIE. I've got a feeling that OKOLIE's going to come in too heavy, and he's going to have a lot of trouble with Takam's speed. But whether Takam can hold him off for the duration of the bout, we will see. We will see. I'm going to pick Takam though. I see him picking Ngannou to win. They're both Cameroon, so no surprise there.
Give you an idea of how kind of unusual this is and how big this is. This is a fight for the British title, which in itself is massive, but there were jurisdiction issues because the Border Control have never had to do this before. They've never had to sanction a fight for the Lonsdale belt outside of Britain before.
It's historic.
So obviously they're talking about Fabio Wardley defending his British title against David Adeleye. That is unprecedented that the Lonsdale belt will be fought for on foreign soil. It's not quite true. Freddie Welsh, British lightweight champion, he beat Johnny Summers in 1909 for the Lonsdale belt at the National Sporting Club, Covent Garden, London. The British Boxing Border Control didn't require Freddie to defend twice so he could be the outright owner. Later they changed the ruling so you have to win the belt and defend it 3 times, but back then just 3 consecutive wins would win you the belt. Freddie made his money in America more than the UK. He was world champion out there and he was very successful. In 1931, his Lonsdale belt was awarded to the winner of Kid Chocolate, a Cuban boxer, and Tony Canzoneri, an American. Canzoneri won a split decision, defending both his world lightweight and junior welterweight title, both titles sanctioned by the National Boxing Association, aka today the WBA. At the end of the fight, Canzoneri was awarded Freddie Welsh's Lonsdale belt, and this was at Madison Square Garden. True story. But yeah, it is a historical fight, WARDLEY ADELEYE. That's the first time the British title has been fought for on foreign soil, but not the first time the Lonsdale belt has been fought for. I think David is rightly a little worried about this step up. He's tried to hide it by being very boisterous and aggressive, had his little posse and stuff, and one of them snuffed WARDLEY from a blind side and floored him and cut his face up. All boxers have to go through that phase that ADELEYE is going through, where they've got to bluff, try and hide how they're really feeling to their opponent. Fabio, from reading his body language, he's not bluffing. This is who Fabio is. He's not a Ladbroke Grove bad man like Dave. But when Dave gets in the ring, his brother and the Ladbroke Grove crew won't be in the ring with him. It would just be him. And that suits Fabio WARDLEY just fine. David ADELEYE has to try and keep Fabio off balance. Use that double jab. Got to move his head, because he doesn't have the quickest feet. Try and rough him up inside. Hit to the body. And he's got to keep that left hand up. Because Fabio's right hand, whether it's a hook or cross, is a very powerful punch. Fabio, with his hybrid style is what I'll call it, because he didn't have no amateur experience, just some white collar fights. He'll drop his hands and he'll square up. That's how he got caught by Molina, and that's how Nathan Gorman was catching him. With Gorman, he actually had his hands up, but his legs were stock still right in front of Nathan. So he switches off at times, and I believe David has the power to hurt Fabio. Eric Molina hurt him. Nathan Gorman hurt him. ADELEYE has clubbing type power, not the same snap on his shots as Fabio. David has to step in behind the jab, keep his shape, because if he doesn't, I believe he'll get clipped. David will have to pull out something that we haven't seen to win this fight, in my opinion. In my opinion, he lost to Sokolowski, the journeyman, but got the decision. I don't know much about his trainer, Frank Greaves. Is he the right man for the job? I don't know. He's 6'4" and a bit, 26 years of age. He started at 217 at 2019, and now he's coming in 235. He looks a lot heavier. Maybe he's just naturally filling out. But unless he boxes a really sound technical fight on the front foot, where he's keeping his left hand up and moving his head, he will need some mobility. Because I don't think he's going to slip all them right hands by moving his head and blocking. He needs to circle to his right, away from that right. And if not, we'll see how good his chin is. Because one thing you can't account for with Fabio is that the switch, where he does the Bill Bigsby thing and turns into the incredible Fabio. He done it to Eric Molina, he done it to Coffey, he done it to Nick Webb, he done it to Nathan Gorman. I think ADELEYE will be sufficiently prepared to give it his best, and it should be a hard fight. Ben Davison will be looking to correct a lot of Fabio's mistakes. Don't stand square on, don't switch off, correct his balance when he punches, because sometimes he's all about the place. That could be attributed to the lack of amateur resume. Use your speed, your mobility, use your jab, pick your shots, and the openings will manifest. 28 years of age, British champion, 6'5". He carries the 240, which he's weighed for his last couple of fights pretty well. If I was to pick, I'd pick Fabio inside the distance, anywhere from round 8 and 12.
He's a hard night's work. For me, he might be the most experienced fighter I ever faced. He's seen every style. He's boxed everyone. He's been knocked down, got up. Only been stopped once a long time ago by Drodston, the 11th round. He's been in there with Dorticus, who's an absolute monster. Yeah. Went 12 rounds of him. And he's beaten unbeaten people recently, as recent as his last fight. And like I said, I don't want to be a flash in the pan, so there's fear, but that's what's motivating me. Yeah, I can't be thinking, well, I've beat Lawrence, so I'll beat Masterneck. No way, because Masterneck is busier than Lawrence. He puts his shots together better. He's heavy-handed with all his shots.
He's not a one-trick pony.
He's not a one-trick pony, and he's possibly the toughest man in the division, maybe apart from me, hopefully.
Well, the rumours have been spreading for the last few weeks, and Chris BILLIAM Smith confirms it. He will be taking on Matthias Masterneck on December the 10th in Bournemouth. Now, Billiam Smith, he won the WBO Cruiserweight title from Lawrence Okolie in May, same venue where he's going to defend against Masternak. Lawrence activated a rematch clause. Billiam Smith, with a big grin on his face, him and Shane were saying that Sky didn't want Lawrence to headline. Here it is. Billiam Smith and Shane were not lying. But certain stuff just seems obvious to me. If your rival, who's just took your belt, is saying that Sky do not want you to headline, and your rival's coach says the same thing, the coach who used to train you, and they didn't say it once, they've said it several times, and the promoter who promotes both Billiam Smith and Okolie doesn't come out and put that to bed, what does that tell you? That there was an air of truth, perhaps, to that rumour. It's not exactly putting Lawrence in a good light, is it? And you're supposed to be promoting him. Every time Chris Billiam Smith has been interviewed recently, he said the same thing. That Sky are not interested in Lawrence headlining. And he's not a smack talker. He never smack talks. It didn't sound like he was smack talking to me. He was just saying it how it was. Now, Ben is spinning it that Lawrence is moving up to heavy. He's struggling to make cruiser. It's hard for big guys to fight little guys. So we expect him to move up to heavy. I mean, he's not going to come out and say Sky don't want him to headline on the Bournemouth card. He's not going to come out and say that. So this is the new spin tactic, and we haven't heard from Lawrence for ages. We haven't heard from him for ages. And I'm expected to believe that Lawrence is just going to walk away from his cruiserweight title without trying to get it back.
I know that the weight is difficult for him. He's a big guy, and sometimes dealing with smaller guys can be difficult for the big men, and I know that's his dream, that's where he wants to be, and yeah, I expect to see him at heavyweight soon.
And I mentioned Sugar Hill earlier. Will he be in your corner in your training camp for the rematch?
Yeah, I believe so.
I mean, that was just 3 weeks ago, that interview. And he's talking about the rematch. They didn't mention nothing about him being tight at the weight in the interview at all. He wanted the rematch. He wanted it up till 3 weeks back. Regardless if he was tight at the weight or not. He wanted the rematch. Get his belt back, then move up to heavy, is what I'm assuming. Ben Shalom not silencing Billiam Smith and Shane McGuigan's claim that Sky didn't want him headlining. Well, that basically says it all. It looks like there was a lot of potential legal ramifications, especially with Ben telling Masternak not to fight Jai Opetaia for the IBF belt, telling him he's got to fight at Sky with Chris Billiam Smith, when Lawrence Okolie's got a rematch clause. So maybe Masternak has got something on paper to protect him in case Ben tries to screw him over with the shot against Billiam Smith when he's already turned down a title shot with Jai Opetaia. Maybe Lawrence turned down a shot to save Ben's ass from Masternak. They're talking about there being a time limit on a rematch clause, and if Lawrence was injured, unable to make the fight in time to invoke the rematch clause, then Billiam Smith could walk away. Well, I don't remember Lawrence getting injured since the first fight. It might be legally correct. If he wanted that rematch and they're saying, well, time limits run out, morally, your promoter has no respect for you. I don't know if he's got compensated for letting Masternak take the fight, but eventually Lawrence will have to come out and do interviews and explain the situation, and we'll hear what he's got to say. JANIBEK ADELEYE, unified IBF and WBO middleweight champion. He's recently been calling out Chris EUBANK. Now it seems the WBO were either in the process of installing Chris as a mandatory challenger, or they got in contact to see if he wanted the fight, and Team EUBANK have sent back an email asking not to be installed as a mandatory challenger for JANIBEK ADELEYE. We kindly request that you refrain from considering him for any mandatory bouts or eliminators for your esteemed titles in the forthcoming weeks. Currently, we are in the midst of negotiations for an alternative fight on his behalf, and we wish to be considerate of everyone's time while ensuring opportunities for other fighters are preserved. Now, at least they're not holding up traffic, keeping everybody waiting to see what they're going to do. Seems pretty obvious that the Conor Ben fight is near announcement. The purists are going to say, well, why didn't he take his world title shot? When I started watching boxing, fighters didn't turn down world title shots. In reference to the boxer fighters, Dan Aziz, Joshua Buatsi, Richard Riakporhe turning down title fights on Ben Shalom's clock, and he allowed that to happen. The thing is, though, is like they don't have the options like EUBANK does with a big lucrative domestic clash with Conor. they don't have that, then I can understand them turning down the title shots. But with that being said, there's going to be a lot of purists saying, boy, Chris, you had the opportunity to be unified champion at 160 and you're turning it down to fight Conor Benn in some catch weight. Well, it might not actually be a catch weight, it might be at 160 in some domestic fight. But Chris is going to get paid a whole load of money. They're both invested in the fight. They have been since early last year. And this is the route that Conor, Chris, the Sauerlands and Eddie Hearn are heading in. Obviously, they want to get the British Boxing Board of Control to sanction it so they can hold it in Britain. And if not, they'll go abroad. Question is, what camp are you in? Do you believe EUBANK should have took his opportunity to become a world champion rather than take a non-title fight against Conor for a lot of money? What camp do you sit in?